Hello and thanks for tuning in to Kalkine TV. James Preston with you live from our studios in Sydney, and you're watching the Economic Corner, where we update you on all the biggest global economic announcements. Let's start on the home front, and driven by an accelerating global economic recovery from the pandemic, Australia's earnings from energy and mining exports are forecast to set another record in the next 12 months. The energy and mining exports are forecast to rise by nearly 8% to $254 billion in the year to June 30, 2022. The Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources said in its latest quarterly report that the Department of Export's earnings in fiscal year 2021 are seen at a record $310 billion Australian dollars. It's forecasted that rising earnings from liquefied natural gas and coal shipments are expected to drive the increase next year. Iron ore, which accounts for nearly half of resources earnings, seen easing from record levels. Bigger contributions are also expected from key battery metals such as copper, nickel and lithium. Next year is expected to be the peak of the commodities upswing. The government is expecting revenues to moderate to $304 billion Australian dollars in the 2023 fiscal year as economic growth starts to cool. The report also noted downside risk to its forecast and a potential spike in global inflation. Not just this, a sharper than expected tightening of monetary policy by major central banks, as well as delays in the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines, are expected to all be on the cards. Let's now move on from the Australian energy and mining exports update to the United Kingdom. The UK food sector is facing a massive challenge this summer due to a shortage of workers. The Food and Drink Federation has said that a stretched labour market will fuel inflation. The UK food industry is already facing labour shortages because of Brexit and the pandemic, and as per the report, meat processors are cutting production and a dearth of drivers is disrupting food deliveries to supermarkets. Warehouses and farms are also short on labour, and the shortages started with Brexit, which capped the inflows of low-paid workers from the European Union. And the problem escalated during the pandemic, with thousands of people from the 27-nation bloc leaving the UK. With workers leaving the country, labour shortages are adding pressure on food costs that are already boosted by higher commodity prices and logistical disruptions. From the UK to the US, and the United States military has launched airstrikes against Iranian-backed militias in Syria in retaliation for drone attacks. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said in a statement that the strikes targeted sites were used to launch drone attacks on US personnel and facilities in Iraq. Kirby said that the US strikes targeted operational and weapons storage facilities at 2 locations in Syria and 1 location in Iraq. Both the locations lie close to the border between those 2 countries. Several Iran-backed militia groups used the facilities, and according to a defence official, US F-15 and F-16 warplanes carried out the airstrikes, targeting 3 facilities that had been used to control the drones and for logistics. All the pilots have returned safely. The official added that it's still too early to tell if there were any casualties on the ground among the civilian population or militants. And now it's time for a very short break on Kalkine TV, but stay tuned as I'll be back in just a moment to share the latest news from the UK and also Russia.
Hi, this is Andy Lou broadcasting from Kalkine Media Studio in Australia, and I'll be hosting the new Kalkine Wellness Show. The half-hour show will cover topics from how wellness as a concept has become even more significant during COVID, to how becoming vegan may improve your health, and much more. We are excited to showcase our live streaming show to our audience of millions overseas and in Australia. Tune in to Kalkine TV and join me.
Welcome back. Great to have your company on Kalkine TV, live from our studios in Sydney. This is the Economic Corner, and now it's time to turn our attention to the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom Tax Authority has launched 13,000 investigations into the use of the government's coronavirus business support schemes. The investigations include possible fraud and other breaches of rules. A law firm, BLM, said the number of investigations could rise sharply in the coming years. Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs is probing businesses for possible abuses of coronavirus support measures like the government's furlough program, the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme and the Eating Out to Help meal subsidy measures. These interventions are investigations carried out by HMRC to protect or recover funds lost to fraud, tax avoidance and also evasion. And now let's look at this important news from the pandemic recovery phase. Russia has introduced tough new restrictions, including regional lockdowns and compulsory vaccinations, in a response to a third coronavirus wave sweeping the country. Russia recorded 20,538 coronavirus cases on Sunday, among its highest numbers since January. Meanwhile, Moscow recorded 114 coronavirus deaths on Sunday, a record during the pandemic. Despite the vaccine being free and open to all since December, only 16.7 million of Russia's 145 million population have had the 2 shots. Changing track just a little bit, and here is a piece of good news for employees of the global firm UBS that provides financial services. UBS plans to allow up to 2/3 of its staff to mix working from home and the office on a permanent basis. The move is expected to give the Swiss lender an edge over Wall Street banks when recruiting. The move to embrace a hybrid working model has been led by Chief Executive Ralph Hammers and his top managers and underlines the growing gulf with the more hardline approach adopted by many US banks. And lastly, let's now look at this piece of news coming from Australia. Strict stay-at-home orders are announced for all people in Greater Sydney, including the Blue Mountains, Central Coast and Wollongong from 6 p.m. on Saturday. Of course, these lockdowns are now in effect. The lockdown will remain in place until Friday, July 9. Everybody in Greater Sydney must stay at home unless it is for an essential reason like shopping for essential goods, medical or compassionate needs, exercise outdoors in groups of 10 or less, essential work or education. The New Zealand government has announced it is suspending the Trans-Tasman bubble for those flying from Australia for 3 days from late Saturday due to, quote, multiple cases and outbreaks in Australia. Well, that's all from the Economic Corner for today. Stay tuned though for more of the latest news and market updates. Holly Shields will be with you next for the market close report in the last trades. I'm James Preston for Kalkine TV.